Welcome, Julia.
Thank you.
Glad to see you and glad to be here with you to talk about the Psalms. And I think we're going to start right at the beginning, aren't we?
We are with Psalm number 1. Such a great introduction to the Psalms because it's very clear if you read through the whole book that it's been intentionally added to. So I'd like to talk a bit about how Psalm 1 sets you up to read the whole book. Because what it's going to do is to lay out the mentality and the thinking that will run throughout the rest of the book. For example, it tells us that there are two paths, two black and white, mutually exclusive paths, the path of the righteous and the path of the wicked.
The wicked path.
The wicked path. It's wonderful how the imagery helps you get that idea too, the idea that the righteous are like trees planted by streams of water.
A beautiful image too.
Who wouldn't want to be a tree? But the wicked are things you don't want to be. They're shrubs that are blown away. Very stark, contrasting images that help us get the idea of these two different paths. And what the psalm does is to set us up to look at life that way and to understand that part of what's going to happen is for us to learn how to think like the righteous and not like the wicked.
I see. And then the notion of how do we know how to think, I guess, is represented in the reference to the law, which happens very quickly. And we delight in the law, that second verse.
That phrase really surprises a lot of Christians because the idea of to delight in the law of the Lord goes against the idea that the law is a burden, something Jesus came to release us from. It does show you the ancient Israelite understanding that God's instructions are something that are wonderful, that help you know how to get on the right path.
The law itself that was given to them, does that present itself to the people who are using and reading the Psalms at that time?
I think it does, and that word may again be an indication that this psalm was originally put or intentionally put at the beginning to help you see that the Pentateuch, what Christians often call the law, is not at odds with prayer. In fact, the whole book of Psalms is organized in a 5-book structure. Book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like the first 5 books of the Bible, would help an ancient reader, and modern ones too, recognize that when we come to God with our inmost selves and our prayers, that's not at odds with our religious communities and what we've understood as moral instruction. It all comes together in that one psalm.
Well, that reflects back to what you started with, which is that there seems to be planning here. There's an editing process and they're creating a parallel structure intentionally.
That's one of the more exciting things that's happened in the last 10 years or so with Psalm scholarship is recognizing that there's some intentional ordering of the Psalms, that it matters which one's number 1 and which one's number 23 and which one's number 52. That there was some thinking that went behind making the Psalms into a book and not just a random anthology of prayers and liturgies from ancient Israel.
Right. You mentioned 23. We could transition right into 23 because we're going to talk about that right now too, aren't we?
Yes. Psalm 23 is so familiar. The Lord is my shepherd. It's a very powerful psalm that uses several different images. I think it took me a long time to realize there are really 2 images there for God instead of just one. It starts out with God is my shepherd, implying that I am the sheep. However, in verse 5, it shifts to God as a host, and I am the guest. Very powerful images that help us think about who God is, as well as what our relationship with God is.
Right. You know, it's got one of those lines that so many of us know so well, walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Talk a little bit about that one.
Although that's not what you find in the new RSV translation anymore. The Hebrew phrase means something more like through the valley of deathly darkness. And that's what's being reflected there in the darkest valley. The image of death is not just about physical death, but it's also about those times in life that are the darkest and the deepest. And even then, God is there.
There's a lot of metaphorical imagery. You begin with, we have the tree, we have the shrub, the tumbleweed. Here we've got the darkness. So I guess we can expect a lot more of that as we move through the Psalms.
It's true. Psalms is poetry. And so we're going to read it in a lot of the ways we read poetry, looking for comparisons, looking for imagery. That's one of my favorite things about the Psalms is that there's not just one way of understanding God.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple. God's going to be not only shepherd and host, God's going to be king, cup, shield, fortress. And every one of those images gives us a new aha moment, again, into who God is, as well as how we relate to God.
Well, it's going to be a great journey through the Psalms. I look forward to it.
Me too.